We're going in depth on the war between Russia and Ukraine and our country's role in this conflict with Jim Ludes, who is the executive director of the Pell Center for International Relations and Public Policy at Salve Regina. Jim, thank you for being here once again.
Thanks for having me back, Kayla.
So just a few minutes ago, we ran a story about Ukraine's president and other European leaders meeting at the White House for talks with the president. How significant are these talks?
I think they're potentially very significant. The proof is going to be in the pudding ultimately, but the fact of the matter is that a few months ago, the idea that there would be a series of diplomatic thrusts, first in Alaska with President Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin, and now 3 days later between President Zelensky, who we might remember was sort of harangued in the Oval Office at the start of the second Trump administration. It's a remarkable turn of events, and I think we have to give some due credit to President Trump for getting these conversations going. Whether or not they amount to something productive at the end, I think is still a very open question.
And as you mentioned, President Trump met with Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, last week, another high-profile, sort of high-stakes meeting in the last few days. What was your biggest takeaway from that meeting?
Well, I think that the big winner coming out of that turns out to be Vladimir Putin. So he was incredibly isolated internationally. There's an international arrest warrant for him for war crimes from the war in Ukraine. And the fact of the matter is that he would be greeted with a red carpet and a military flyover at an American military base in Alaska. Does not look good. It's not I think the symbol or the message that we want to send to the rest of the world. But more importantly, beyond the symbolics of it, President Trump gave away some really important ground in those conversations with President Putin, particularly around the question of a ceasefire. Should there be a ceasefire? Should the killing stop before further negotiations take place? President Trump traveled to Alaska saying he was going to demand that, and if there wasn't, there would be severe consequences. After meeting with President Putin, he backed off that entirely. Today, we heard European heads of state pleading, urging President Trump to come back to the need for a ceasefire to stop the killing immediately. President Trump expressed a sort of a sympathy for that perspective, excuse me, but was not, but was not taken by that argument.
Yeah, and I want to bring us back to some of the discussions happening today about ways to end the war, including the possibility of some land exchange. This war is now 3.5 years into it. What is the best solution, I guess, for each country and the U.S. at stake here?
Yeah, so what President Putin has asked for is essentially the carving off of the eastern 20% of Ukraine. That's a significant portion of Ukraine. They are Russian speakers. That is the part of Ukraine that is most ethnically aligned with Russia. The real reality here is, though, that historically, every time someone has tried to give land for peace, it doesn't typically end well. I'm an old graduate student who studied history and European diplomatic history, and the Munich analogy sort of lingered throughout the 20th century. The idea in 1938 that the Western Allies would achieve peace in Europe, peace for our time is what Neville Chamberlain called it, by negotiating a land for peace deal with Adolf Hitler. It didn't work then. I don't think ultimately it would work now. I think ultimately Vladimir Putin has said that his desire is to restore the old Russian Empire, and that certainly doesn't sound like something you're going to achieve with peace.
Now, we've had you on at 4 before to talk about this ongoing conflict. We often ask you, where you see things going from here. A lot has happened in the last, 3 days or so. Do you see this kind of starting to reach an endpoint here? I
think that there, as we were saying just before we went on camera, that that things are either going to collapse on the battlefield or there's going to be some sort of diplomatic settlement. Again, I think that it's wonderful that we're trying to find a diplomatic solution, but I think that the likelihood is that the entrenched interests both in Russia and in Ukraine are going to find it very difficult to accomplish some of the compromises that would be necessary to actually achieve a lasting peace. So hope for peace, work for peace, but I think I would be a little bit skeptical in the near term anyways.
All right. Always appreciate having your insight on this conflict. I'm sure we'll bring you on again when there's more developments, but that is all the time we have today. Jim Ludes with the Pell Center at Salve Regina. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kayla.